And go. All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to give everybody just a few seconds to get themselves logged in, and then we'll kick off this monthly briefing webinar. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation's Economic Briefing. It's wonderful to have you virtually join us once again. My name is Shane Cullen, and I oversee events for the LAEDC and will be your moderator this morning. Today, we are joined by the LAEDC CEO, Bill Allen, the director of the LAEDC's Institute for Applied Economics, Shannon Sedgwick, and Max Dunsker, one of our research analysts at the Institute for Applied Economics. For those that have not had the opportunity to join us in the past, let me quickly explain how you can talk to us during the webinar. If you are having technical difficulties during this webinar, please use the chat feature to send those concerns directly to us. This can be found in the controls at the bottom of your screen. At the end of the webinar, we will be answering questions from the audience. In order to submit a question, we ask that you utilize the Q&A features in the controls at the bottom of your screen. Again, in order to submit a question, we ask that you utilize the Q&A feature in the controls at the bottom of your screen. We will send you all the relevant links next week, including a link to the webinar recording. I'd now like to introduce the CEO of the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, Bill Allen.
Thanks, Shane. Great to have everyone with us this morning. We appreciate your regular attendance at these monthly updates on the state of the post-pandemic recovery here in Los Angeles County. We've been doing these for about 18 months now. I'm grateful to the leadership of Shannon Sedgwick, director of our Institute for Applied Economics, and her wonderful team of economists and research analysts for keeping us abreast of the course of the virus and of the progress of our economy to recover from the extraordinary loss of jobs back in March and April of 2020. Shannon will give you an update on the latest numbers just out last Friday from our state's Economic Development Department Labor Market Information Division that show we continue to make modest recovery is how I'll characterize it. There was a significant number of jobs created in the education sector, in public education and in private education, as our schools and colleges went back into session in September. Very modest recovery in other private sector occupations. And so Shannon will share that with you, but then after her presentation, we're asking Max Dunsker, one of our research analysts on the team, to share with you an expanded version of some work that we did for our philanthropic community in recent months. Over the summer, we were asked by the Schmidt Foundation and Southern California grant makers to enlighten a broad cross-section of our philanthropic community about our workforce development system, which has long played a critical role here in Los Angeles County and is now playing an even more fundamental role in our recovery because, as you will hear, more than 400,000 of our neighbors are still unemployed in Los Angeles County. That's a very significant amount of unemployment here, and it's increasingly concerning as there is widening mismatches between the jobs that are being posted and the skills in the remaining labor force who has not yet regained employment. And so our workforce system and our community colleges and others will play a critical role in helping people reattach to employment. There'll be upskilling requirements and reskilling requirements and appropriate placement in industries, career counseling. We have a really extraordinary network of providers of these resources. And not everyone fully understands this enormous complex system that exists all across Los Angeles County. So we thought it would be helpful to share some of how it works with you this morning. But without any further ado, for the latest on what's going on in our pandemic recovery, let me turn it over to Shannon Sedgwick. Shannon, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for LAEDC's monthly economic briefing. I hope that you and your families are continuing to keep well and take proper measures to reduce the spread of COVID-19 infections. Today, I'm going to go over the latest local area employment situation in Los Angeles County to share where we were in the recovery process as of September. And then we'll go over the latest local area employment situation in Los Angeles County to share where we were in the recovery process as of September. And then we'll go over the latest local area employment situation in Los Angeles County to share where we were in the recovery process as of September. And since supplemental and extended unemployment benefits ended the beginning of last month on September 4th, we thought it would be a good time to cover workforce development programs. Max, a research analyst who joined the LAEDC Institute for Applied Economics back in May, he'll be sharing some of that information and research on those workforce development programs here in Los Angeles County. But first, let's check in with where we currently stand. So where do we stand today? COVID-19 infection and hospitalization rates, they're declining in Los Angeles County, but the mask mandate remains in effect indoors and at large events, regardless of vaccination status. Transmission is still substantial across the county and across the rest of the US, meaning that it does have the potential to spread. And we're trying to avoid a winter surge and any future restrictions that may come about in response to that. More companies and organizations are requiring that their employees get vaccinated, yet many individuals remain hesitant to get vaccinated. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, they met and approved boosters for both Moderna and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines last week. And the number of LA County residents who are eligible for a booster, if you break it down by vaccine, by the type of vaccine originally received, it's as follows. It's 1.5 million individuals got Pfizer, 1.7 million got Moderna, and 470,000 received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Looking ahead, they're looking at approval of vaccinations for kids ages 5 to 11 years old coming up in early November, so within the next few weeks here. And there's about 900,000 kids that are between the ages of 5 and 11 in Los Angeles County. Beginning November 4th, proof of full vaccination will be required for anyone entering bars, lounges, breweries, wineries, and nightclubs in Los Angeles County, and proof of full vaccination will be required to enter restaurants, bars, gyms, shopping centers, and entertainment venues and personal care establishments in the city of LA beginning November 6th. And of course, people attending large outdoor events also need to show evidence of either vaccination or proof of a negative COVID-19 test in order to attend these large events. And the threshold for that is 5,000 individuals in the city of Los Angeles and 10,000 for events that are located within the county. The worker shortages in California are indicating that the pandemic may have resulted in a structural change in the state's employment. Decreased foreign immigration into California means less of an inflow of workers and increased migration of workers, especially blue-collar workers, to other states where real estate and the cost of living is cheaper. It could have a negative impact on the state's economy over time if they persist. There's been a huge surge in the purchase of goods, so increased demand. But we are experiencing supply constraints. And this is causing prices to rise. And we should experience these supply chain disruptions. We should expect them and some product shortages that we're experiencing because we do have to remember that this is a global pandemic and we do have global supply chains. And as long as the global pandemic persists, we're going to be experiencing some of this disruption and shortage. At the ports, labor shortages, holiday buying surges, and other COVID-19 related issues, they're leading to backups at the San Pedro Bay ports. and container ships are waiting for a spot to open up in the docks. We've got a high number of cargo ships that have been at anchor or drift. They're waiting to unload. And the high number of ships, so the normal number of vessels in port at our San Pedro Bay ports prior to the pandemic was roughly about 60 vessels. But we broke a record in late September. September 25th, they counted 161 vessels in port. So it really is a matter of them trying to just work through the excess demand and some of the labor shortages that are resulting from COVID-19 with truck drivers and whatnot. So that's where we stand in a nutshell today versus last month. And let's go look at some case numbers and the usual thing. Okay. Over the weekend, Los Angeles County, the Department of Public Health reported well over 1.4 million positive cases of COVID-19 across LA County since the start of the pandemic. And when we look at the daily case rate, we see the curve is flattening for the highly infectious Delta variant. The Los Angeles County Department of Public Health announced 916 new cases of COVID-19 yesterday, with the daily case numbers falling below levels seen over the summer surge. Over the weekend, it was reported the 7-day test positivity rate was now down to less than 1%. It was 0.81%. Hospitalizations are down to 614 people with COVID-19 currently hospitalized across the county. And Los Angeles County over the past month has moved past the 26,000 mark for residents lost to COVID-19 throughout this pandemic. The distribution of COVID-19 vaccines in LA County continues. So millions of people in LA County are vaccinated now, and those who are vaccinated are much less likely to get severely ill or die if they do become infected. Close to 13 million doses have been administered, and now 342,000 boosters have been administered. And as I mentioned just last week, the boosters were approved for the remaining 2 vaccines, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson. So now all 3 are eligible for the eligible populations for the booster. New monthly data on inflation was released covering the month of September. Over the last 12 months, the CPI-U, which is what we use to measure change in prices for consumers, it increased by 4.6%. Food prices increased by 4.7%, and energy prices jumped 25.9%. So energy is still leading the increase of the price levels. And that's related to the increase in the price of gasoline over last year. If you remove food and energy out of the index, you see that the index for all items excluding food and energy increased by just 3% over the year. Let's switch to unemployment insurance claims. Here in Los Angeles County, the number of LA County residents applying for weekly unemployment benefits has dropped to just over 21,000 for the week ending October 16th. UI claims have not been this low since the beginning of the pandemic. And just a reminder that federal unemployment benefits did expire for the unemployed, that $300 supplemental payment, and the PUA program, which provided contract workers and self-employed with benefits. They both ended September 4th, and extended benefits under the Fed Ed program ended September 11th. And that's likely factoring into the reduced numbers of claims that we're seeing. Local area data release covering the month of September. The new data was released last Friday, and we'll go over the local employment situation for Los Angeles County next. First, let's look at monthly total employment in the county since January of 2000. As we've been sharing, the job loss associated with measures to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 was really unprecedented. And we shed close to 800,000 payroll jobs in 2 months' time. You can see that precipitous drop in March and April of 2020, and we're still recovering. So despite the number of jobs that we've added in recent months, as of September 2021, only 56% of non-farm jobs, of those jobs that we lost in those 2 months, have been recovered. Here we have the monthly unemployment rate in Los Angeles County in September. The unemployment rate was 8.2%. And this is down by 5 percentage points from last year when we were still operating under restrictive health orders. So again, we're showing we're in a much better place. However, when we do compare that unemployment rate with the rate in the prior year, we still, pre-pandemic, we see that we're still 3.7 percentage points higher than the pre-pandemic month in 2019. If we look at the trend of LA County's unemployment rate over the last year, we again see that the rate spiked well beyond what we were experiencing during the Great Recession, if we're using that as the basis of comparison, with the peak in May of 18.8%. But by September, the unemployment rates are falling back in line with what we experienced during the Great Recession and moving towards an improved, moving towards larger levels of employment. So, next slide. Throughout the pandemic, we experienced, again, you can see in this monthly change in total payroll employment, just the depth of the job loss that occurred in those 2 months, with most of it occurring within 1 month in April. And excuse me, since then, we have added 56% of those jobs back. You can see that any job loss that we've been experiencing over since the pandemic began was really related to changes that were happening in the health orders as a result of surges. So overall, non-farm jobs, payroll jobs in Los Angeles County, they increased by 31,500 jobs between August and September. If you're looking at that monthly change in jobs by industry, it shows that government jobs expanded by 19,000 jobs over the month. And that's the most of any sector. And all of that was basically in local government, specifically government educational services. So that particular portion of government employment was up by 15,700 jobs over last year. And that's as schools began to come online. That's where all of that employment really started to jump. You also saw private education and health services, which they bundled together, increased by 8,400 jobs. And nearly 3/4 of that job gain was in private educational services. They added 6,100 jobs, and we were seeing that specifically in colleges, universities, and professional schools. Healthcare and social assistance was up as well, but only by 2,300 jobs in comparison. When we look at jobs data year over year, it allows us to compare data while taking seasonality into account. Comparing 2021 data to 2020 data now is really only showing how we're performing over last year in the depths of the pandemic. So to understand where we are in terms of recovery, we also like to look at a pre-pandemic comparison, which provides a clear understanding of how far we have yet to go in order to reach that pre-pandemic employment levels. So here we compare September 2021 jobs data with September 2019 jobs data as well. And although we're adding jobs back to payrolls on a monthly basis, and now if you see on a yearly basis because of the differences between 2020 and 2021, you can see that overall we still do have a ways to go. We're still significantly down across many industries if we're comparing it to the pre-pandemic baseline. So nearly all industries are still experiencing employment contractions when compared to that pre-pandemic baseline, even though we are adding above and beyond and doing so much better than we were last year. So now that was the brief. I wanted to give Max a little bit of time to really talk about the workforce programs. It's something that we work pretty closely with our workforce department here at the LAEDC, and he'll be sharing some data. So I did want to give him some time. I kept that brief. But since we concluded the local employment situation, he's up next. And again, with the expiration of those supplemental and extended unemployment benefits last month, these programs have never been more relevant about how to get people back to work. But before I go and I pass the torch to Max, I do want to take a moment to wish you all a safe Halloween this weekend. And remember to take into consideration closed spaces, crowded places, and close contact settings in order to avoid the spread of COVID-19 infections. And with that, I will hand it over to Max. So Max, it's all yours.
Thank you, Shannon, and good morning, everyone. My name is Max Dunsker, and I'm a research analyst with LAEDC's Institute for Applied Economics. It's a pleasure speaking with you all today. I'm going to share some information and some research regarding workforce development in Los Angeles County. So what is workforce development? The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis describes it as an essential component of community economic development in any economic climate, and certainly even more critical during the financial crises we're experiencing today. Generally speaking, the term has come to describe a relatively wide range of activities, policies, and programs employed by geographies to create, sustain, and retain a viable workforce that can support current and future business and industry. Interestingly, even they struggle to pin a single definition on what workforce development is, ending their description with a caveat, because each user approaches the term from a different direction. Without a single definition, it's all that much more complicated to understand workforce development and its impact on the county's economic prosperity. Over the course of the presentation, you'll come to understand more about the many ways in which the local workforce development apparatus is developing our county's workforce, demonstrating why it is hard both to define and estimate the impact of workforce development. Nevertheless, workforce development is a crucial part of building a more resilient local economy. It is essential to realizing LAEDC's mission of reinventing our economy to collaboratively advance growth and prosperity for all. At the IAE, we contribute research to several of LAEDC's workforce development projects, led by LAEDC's Workforce Development Program, providing information about the state of the workforce and demand for future workers. In this presentation, we'll share the basics to understand how workforce development is done throughout the county, some research on the state of the workforce in the LA region, and analysis of the impact of one workforce development program, the WIOA Title I Adult Program, you'll learn more about in the upcoming slides. So who funds workforce development in LA County? There are four main pools of funding, each funding several programs that have an impact: the federal government, the state government, local government, and private investments. While not the largest source of funding, the federal government is crucial because it establishes a one-stop delivery system around which many sources of funding coalesce. The state government is the largest funder of workforce development by virtue of funding the state public education system. That's the greatest reach of any workforce development program in the state. Local government is also responsible for some workforce development matters, often linked to priority population. For example, LA County has several internship, job readiness training, supportive services, and employment placement programs, with the target population featuring those involved in the criminal justice system, foster youth, refugees, and low-income residents. Finally, to fill the holes in the system, philanthropy and private investments also make up a portion of the workforce development funding in the county, often working through community-based organizations. One example of the role of philanthropy is the Hilton Foundation's program to create meaningful career pathways for opportunity youth. Next, we'll briefly go over some federal, state, and local government funded programs to develop a better understanding of the services available to unemployed workers and other priority populations. There is not nearly enough time to list all of the services offered by and target populations of each program. However, if you have any questions about a specific program, I'd be happy to provide more information about what it does and who it serves. The largest federal funding source is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, which was passed in 2014 to help job seekers access employment, education, training, and support services. There's several different programs, many with different eligible populations and funding formulas. WIOA services are centralized at locations called America's Job Centers of California, or AJCCs, which we'll discuss in the next section. In addition to those 8 WIOA programs, there are 11 other federally funded workforce development programs. While some of these programs serve target populations, like the Jobs for Veterans or Trade Adjustment Assistance Act programs, some are more widely recognized as being part of the social safety net, such as unemployment compensation and temporary assistance for needy families. The state administers some federally funded programs, but it also funds some of its own, the largest of which being the state education funding, which supports K-12 schools, adult education, community colleges, and 2 university systems in the state. This education ultimately equips students to succeed in the workforce, hence it being considered workforce development. There are other programs as well, many of them targeting priority populations, like justice involved or vulnerable and underserved populations. I won't enumerate the more than 30 programs the county lists on its annual economic development scorecard, on top of our 19 federal programs and 7 state programs that have been shown. But it's important to realize that even within the county, we have multiple agencies, 9 in total, working on workforce development issues. From internship programs at the Departments of Arts and Cultures to LA's Youth at Work program. There are many things happening in the workforce development system just within our county. So what does it look like within the county? Within this amalgam of different funders, administrators, and programs, it can be difficult to grasp what workforce development actually looks like on the ground. This section will focus on piecing together how some of the programs listed hitherto manifest within our county. This infographic, which is stripped down to just federal and state government, is a simplification of how these systems interact with one another. To read it from the bottom to top and left to right, the federal government provides funding to unemployed citizens, unemployment insurance, policy to state governments, and funding and policy to social support services in the public workforce system, which now manifest as workforce development boards. State governments also support these boards with funding and policy, in addition to funding educational institutions. From there, social support services are available to unemployed individuals, while they can also pay tuition to receive education at educational institutions. Meanwhile, the public workforce system, workforce development boards, work with employers to provide jobs and training to the unemployed. Eventually, it's the goal that unemployed individuals are matched with employers and enter the workforce. This slide features some information about workforce development boards in LA County. We have 7 different workforce development boards, while the 57 other counties in California have 38 between them. Each workforce development board, or WDB, has a local workforce development area, or LWDA. WIOA provides for the establishment of LWDAs within states. LWDAs serve as the jurisdiction for the administration of workforce development activities under WIOA Title I program, formula funds allocated to the state for those programs. The LWDAs are shown in the map to the right with the name of the workforce development boards listed. In Foothill, there is Arcadia, Duarte, Monrovia, Pasadena, Sierra Madre, and South Pasadena. The city of Los Angeles has its own workforce development board. The Pacific Gateway Workforce Development Board is made up of Long Beach and Signal Hill. South Bay is composed of Carson, El Segundo, Gardena, Hawthorne, Hermosa Beach, Inglewood, Lawndale, Lomita, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, and Torrance. Southeast Los Angeles County has Artesia, Bellflower, Cerritos, Downey, Hawaiian Gardens, Lakewood, Norwalk, and Paramount. Verdugo has Burbank, Glendale, and La Cañada Front Ridge. And then the county of Los Angeles, the large purple one, represents the 57 cities not part of other areas and all incorporated communities throughout the county. American Job Centers of California, or AJCCs, are another critical piece of infrastructure for the workforce development apparatus. Throughout the county, we have 46 AJCCs, which serve as a centralized location for pre-employment services, including intensive career and job search services, self-service options that include access to technology, and other valuable workshops. Here, unemployed individuals can work with staff or case managers to develop an employment plan, revise employment application materials, or improve interviewing skills. For employers, the AJCCs offer a place to provide employment services, including free job postings, candidate recruitment, and access to funds for training. The county's AJCCs are visualized in the map to the right, alongside poverty data from the census. So you can see AJCCs are principally located in high-need areas as they seek to serve the nearby community. In addition to workforce development boards and AJCCs, the county is also home to other resources, with geographies such as 4 California Department of Rehabilitation districts, projects like 11 adult education block grant consortia, and physical locations like the 2 federally funded Job Corps centers. Furthermore, the county's 130 chambers of commerce and hundreds of nonprofits and community-based organizations also support the workforce development system. With all these resources, how does LAEDC inform workforce development in the LA region? With so much need and so many programs, it can be difficult to implement solutions to workforce development on a countywide scale. But LAEDC plays an active role in shaping the county's workforce through our workforce development program, which often receives research support from IAE. LAEDC's workforce development program exists to create economic mobility and equity, support the talent needs of businesses, and align education with evolving industry trends. Workforce development is integrated into LAEDC's research, business assistance, industry council work, and the fabric of our mission. We work in both strategic leadership capacity to support systems change and in a programmatic action level to drive progress. In order to operate on both of these fronts, LAEDC supports or partners with a myriad of organizations, including employers, community colleges, school districts, colleges and universities, workforce development boards, adult education programs, and other institutions to provide industry with a diverse, prepared pool of workers from which to draw. One such partnership is the Los Angeles Center for a Competitive Workforce, or CCW, which pairs LAEDC's Workforce Development Program and Institute for Applied Economics with the LA regions, both LA County and Orange County, community colleges, and the LAOC Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research at Mount San Antonio College. CCW is a strong workforce program, one of the state-funded programs listed earlier, that is oriented towards equipping students with career technical education. To understand the role of LAEDC's Institute for Applied Economics plays in enacting programmatic action to improve the region's workforce, some excerpts from CCW's most recent report, Middle Skill Occupations and Related Career Education Programs Through the Lens of Race and Ethnicity, are shared in the subsequent slides. This report looked through the lens of race and ethnicity to build a more resilient, diverse workforce in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic by identifying target industries with middle skill occupations and an underrepresentation of minority populations. The first step in proactively shaping workforce development is understanding the state of the current workforce. This chart looks at the breakdown of race and ethnicity of the workforce in LA and Orange counties in 2019, using data from the quarterly workforce indicator. Over 70% of the workforce is split between Hispanic or Latino, the largest racial and ethnic group in the county, and white workers. Black workers, who make up over 8% of the workforce, or Black workers make up more than 8% of the workforce, while Asian workers are over twice that, with 16.5%. Those of 2 or more races, American Indian and Alaskan Natives, and Hawaiian/Pacific Islanders make up 3%, 1.4%, and 0.5% respectively. Looking at just the 4 largest races and ethnicities, we can see that despite the county's diverse workforce, there's not equitable representation across different skill levels using data from the Census Bureau's public use microdata sample. Among white and Asian workers, the plurality are within middle skill occupations, with more workers in high skill than low skill occupations. For Black workers, the plurality are also in middle skill occupations, but the percentage in low skill occupations is twice that of the percentage in high skill occupations. Finally, Hispanic and Latino workers are mostly in low skill occupations, with the second highest being middle skill and less than 10% of workers in high skill occupations. Among higher occupational skills classifications, wages are higher. So this lack of representation in higher skill occupations may drive large differences in median household income by race and ethnicity. The next step after understanding the workforce is developing strategies to build a more resilient and diverse workforce for the region moving forward. To inform this, the report identifies 3 key sectors called equitable recovery target sectors that stand to benefit from increased diversity, where Black, Hispanic, and Asian workers are underrepresented, and can provide well-paying middle skill occupations. The first is the construction sector, where the presence of Black and Asian workers is relatively low. Next is healthcare, where there's a low proportion of Black workers in middle and high skill occupations, indicating an opportunity for upskilling and increased workforce equity. Third is professional and business services, where there's an underrepresentation of workers of color across the middle skill occupations in the sector. The selection of these 3 sectors was also due to analysis of the demand of industry and anticipation of future trends. When shaping the county's future workforce, it's necessary to understand where there will be need within that workforce. This demand side analysis is an important piece of the IAE's contribution to CCW. The anticipated net job change in each of the 3 equitable target recovery sectors is featured in this graph, with 8,630 net new jobs in construction, 157,230 net new jobs in professional and business services, and 9,640 net new jobs in healthcare in the period of 2019 to 2024. This slide goes even further to identify the top occupations within the equitable recovery target sectors by net job growth over the same period. The majority of the top occupations are middle or high skill, illuminating the presence of specific occupations which will need more workers in the upcoming year. In addition to net new job growth, the demand side analysis also considers replacement jobs, which are jobs that will be open due to turnover in the workforce, retirement, or other reasons. Here, the top occupations within equitable recovery target sectors by replacement jobs are listed. These jobs are also higher than that of net new jobs, accounting for 91.1% of job openings within the sectors over the period of 2019 to 2024. Most of these occupations are also middle skill. Another way to view demand is through job posting. Though these are not forecasted forward, they give a clear picture of current demand within the job market using data from Burning Glass. Taking anticipated new jobs and replacement jobs together with recent job postings gives a clear picture of present and future demand in the job market for these occupations, informing proactive programmatic action within workforce development. The strength of the partnership with CCW is that a clear picture of demand can be compared to the current supply of community college students in career technical education pathways towards these occupations. This is an innovative strategy that's serving as an example for other places throughout the nation, as it gives a very clear understanding of current workforce development status, where there is unmet demand, and where supply of students may not match job opportunities in the region. This report is only the most recent example from a long-standing partnership, with LAEDC's IAE providing research to CCW since 2018. Reports range from concise sector scans of individual industries to LA Basin labor market reports. Some additional examples are listed below, and all can be found on the CCW website. Taking another step back from presenting research that LAEDC has done to inform workforce development in the region, it leaves an important question of how to measure success in workforce development. With such a complex system, with so many actors and a variety of programs, it's next to impossible to develop a holistic understanding of how these interventions impact metrics such as employment rate across all federal, state, and local government programs. Considering that the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis struggled to define workforce development, all that much more understandable that it's hard to define exactly what success looks like for a workforce development program. In this section, we'll look at the multiple metrics that the WIOA Title I program releases to track its impact in LA County. To study programmatic success, it's necessary to narrow the scope. As WIOA Title I has 3 programs within it, I'll look specifically at the largest, the adult program, though data is available for dislocated worker and youth programs upon request. To look at programmatic success, the indicators which WIOA tracks, post-program employment and earnings, credential rate, and measurable skills gains will be analyzed by demographic variables. This slide looks at first who the program reaches and exits. Does a good job of reaching both male and female residents, evidenced by a relatively even split in both years. Across age categories, it mostly interacts with those between 25 and 44, though that's also the largest age window within the data set that WIOA releases. It also has succeeded in reaching Black residents, as they have been served more than white residents, despite Black workers being a fourth of the percentage of the labor force that white workers are over our larger region. It's done a good job of reaching English learners, ex-offenders, homeless individuals, and individuals with disabilities, with all four seeing more exits in 2019 than 2018, an upward trend. Analyzing Q2 employment outcomes, it shows that older individuals, as well as ex-offenders, homeless individuals, and individuals with disabilities, did not meet employment targets in either of the 2 years, indicating that those populations may need different kinds of employment services than those being offered, or merely reflecting that those individuals have a harder time getting jobs. Additionally, American Indian and Alaska Natives are the only racial and ethnic group not to meet the target employment rate in both years. Q4 employment outcomes reflect issues with the same populations as those who are struggling with Q2 employment, which is not unexpected, but most groups achieve relative similarities between the two graphs. Looking at median earnings among those employed, youth, older participants, and those receiving CAMP were the groups that struggled to reach the target in both years. And then finally, looking at, next slide. And then finally, looking at credential rate and skills gain, many groups failed to reach the target in 2019, despite having done so in 2018. With these indicators, it appears that the Title I adult program has been effective over the last 2 years in reaching a wide swath of Angelenos and helping them achieve and maintain gainful employment and economic prosperity after exiting the program. This presentation has shared some of the many programs doing workforce development in our county. And while it didn't provide a total comprehensive look into the success of the workforce development apparatus, I hope you all gained some understanding about the system and how the system and LAEDC work behind the scenes in the county to create a more resilient, diverse, and equipped workforce for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Max and Shannon. That was terrific. I hope everybody enjoyed that brief overview of our workforce system, particularly because of the importance, as Shannon and I stressed at the beginning of the webinar today, of this system to helping us with further job recovery in the region, given the constant evolution of the nature of work and occupations and industries in our region. This will always be a critically important system, but given the dramatic shifts in consumer and business behavior as a result of the pandemic, this system is more important than ever, as Max and Shannon and I have emphasized today. I know we've taken a lot of time. We try and honor the 45-minute schedule here, so I don't know that we'll have time for questions today. I think I saw a couple that were typed in that we tried to type answers to those who posted the questions. But we thank you for engaging in these regular updates. We hope you'll share the information we share with you. We are continuing on the recovery path, as I mentioned. We'd like to see stronger recovery in the private sector. We're encouraged by some news from our colleagues at Film LA that production in the Q3 was at historically high levels of shoot days, more than 10,000 shoot days. That's up more than 100% from the prior year, Q3 during 2020, when production was largely shut down during the summer of 2020. So we're going the right direction with our signature entertainment industry. We got some other good news in other sectors, but a lot more work all of us have to do. Most of you on this webinar with us this morning are our government and business and education partners. You're all doing great work to help us continue to recover. The economy is doing reasonably well. It's the job piece of our recovery that really needs our continued attention. So feel free to reach out to us if you want copies of these slides or any clarification on any of these issues. And thank you for being part of the either membership or partnership of the LAEDC in this region. Have a great day. Stay dry, stay healthy, keep responsibly using your masks and encouraging folks to get vaccinated. If we seem like we beat that drum every month, it's because it's critical to our economic recovery. As Shannon said, we don't want to see another winter surge. You saw from the chart she showed how dramatic that was last year. We don't expect as dramatic a winter surge this year, but we'd like to see no winter surge if we can, so that we can continue to remove restrictions from our various enterprises in the region, allow them to get back to fuller revenue models and fuller employment levels in the months to come. Take good care of all of yourselves, and we'll see you again soon.